I still remember the exact moment. My entire life flipped upside down. My boss stood in front of me, closed the office door, looked me straight in the eyes, and said the three words that made my brain completely freeze: "I'm pregnant." For a second, I honestly thought she was joking. I mean, what else was I supposed to think? She was my boss, the CEO of the company I worked for, a woman who barely smiled in meetings and had a reputation for firing people who couldn't keep up. But she wasn't joking. Her voice was shaking, her eyes looked terrified, and the silence between us suddenly felt heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. My mind was racing, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Because the way she said it, the way she was looking at me, it made it sound like I was somehow involved in this situation. And that's when the real question hit me like a truck. Was she trying to tell me the baby was mine, or was something even stranger happening? Tell me honestly, if your boss suddenly told you she was pregnant and looked at you like you were the reason, what would you have done? My name is Marcus Hill, and before that moment happened, my life was pretty simple. Not easy, but simple. I was a single father raising my 8-year-old daughter, Maya. Her mother left when Maya was 2, deciding motherhood wasn't the life she wanted. I don't talk badly about her, because at the end of the day, she gave me the most important person in my life. But the truth is, raising a child alone isn't something you're ever truly prepared for. Every morning started before the sun came up. I'd make Maya breakfast, braid her hair the best I could, which still came out crooked half the time, and walk her to the bus stop before rushing to work. Some nights I came home so exhausted I barely made it to the couch, but when Maya ran up and hugged me, calling me Super Dad, it reminded me why I kept pushing. My job wasn't glamorous. I worked as a logistics coordinator for a corporate consulting company in the city. It paid enough to keep the lights on and give Maya a decent life, and that was all that mattered. The company itself was big, the kind of place where people wore expensive suits and talked about profit margins like they were discussing sports scores. And in the middle of all that corporate chaos was the woman everyone feared, my boss, Claire Donovan. Claire was the youngest CEO the company had ever hired. She was brilliant, ruthless in negotiations, and known for making decisions that shocked everyone. Some people admired her, others were terrified of her. Personally, I just tried to stay out of her way and do my job well. I had interacted with her a few times during company meetings, but she was so far up the corporate ladder that people like me rarely crossed her radar. At least that's what I thought. The first time she really noticed me happened about 8 months before that strange pregnancy conversation. It was during a company crisis. A massive shipping contract had fallen apart overnight, and the executives were scrambling to fix the damage before investors found out. I was sitting quietly in the back of a conference room during an emergency meeting when one of the managers presented a plan that made absolutely no sense. It would have cost the company millions and delayed deliveries for weeks. Everyone around the table nodded politely, but I knew it was a disaster waiting to happen. I remember sitting there arguing with myself in my head. Who was I to speak up? I was just a coordinator. But then I thought about Maya and the promise I had made to always do the right thing even when it was scary. So I raised my hand. The room went silent. Dozens of executives turned to look at me like I had just broken some unspoken rule. Claire leaned back in her chair and asked calmly, "You have something to add?" My voice was shaking, but I explained why the plan wouldn't work and offered a different solution. I expected someone to laugh or shut me down, but instead Claire stared at me for a long moment. Then she asked me to explain the entire idea step by step. 10 minutes later, the entire strategy for saving the contract had changed based on my suggestion. That day, I walked out of the meeting thinking it was a one-time moment. I had no idea it would change my career. A week later, I got called into Claire's office. I thought I was in trouble. Instead, she offered me a promotion to operations supervisor. The raise helped more than she probably realized. It meant better school supplies for Maya, a chance to move to a safer neighborhood, and maybe even a small vacation someday. But the promotion also meant I started working closer to Claire than before. And that's when I started noticing things about her most employees never saw. She wasn't just the cold, intimidating executive people described. She worked harder than anyone else in the building. Some nights I'd stay late finishing reports and see her office light still on at midnight. She rarely talked about her personal life, but sometimes during quiet moments she asked about Maya. It always caught me off guard because it felt strangely sincere. Months passed, and our professional relationship slowly turned into something more comfortable. Not friendship exactly, but mutual respect. She trusted my judgment during operations decisions, and I respected the way she handled pressure. But there was something else too, something subtle that I couldn't quite explain. Occasionally, I'd catch her watching me during meetings like she was trying to figure something out. The looks weren't inappropriate or anything like that, just curious. Still, I ignored it. My life was already complicated enough being a single father. Getting tangled in workplace drama was the last thing I needed. Then came the company retreat that started everything. Every year, the company held a weekend leadership retreat at a luxury resort outside the city. Supervisors and executives were invited for team building exercises and strategy planning. Normally, those events were painfully awkward, full of forced networking and polite conversations about quarterly profits. I almost didn't go because finding childcare for Maya was difficult. But my sister agreed to watch her for the weekend. The retreat started normally enough, meetings, workshops, and group dinners. But the second night something unusual happened. A storm rolled in, knocking out the power across the entire resort. The fancy schedule disappeared instantly, leaving everyone wandering around in candle-lit hallways like confused tourists. I stepped outside to get some fresh air and escape the awkward small talk inside. The rain was light at first, just a gentle drizzle tapping against the wooden deck. I leaned against the railing, thinking about Maya, and wondering if she was having fun at her aunt's house. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw Claire walking toward me, holding a glass of wine and looking surprisingly relaxed compared to her usual corporate persona. She stood beside me, looking out at the dark ocean beyond the resort. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then she laughed softly and said she had never experienced a company retreat turning into a blackout survival exercise before. That conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. We talked about everything: work, childhood memories, funny office stories. For the first time, I saw the human side of her. She told me she had grown up in a strict household where success was expected, not celebrated. I told her about raising Maya alone and the chaos of trying to braid hair at 6 in the morning. She laughed harder than I had ever seen her laugh in the office. Eventually, the rain got heavier, and we ran back inside, soaked and laughing, like two people who had completely forgotten they were supposed to be boss and employee. Nothing inappropriate happened that night. We went back to our separate rooms and continued the retreat the next day like normal. But something between us had shifted. The professional barrier felt thinner somehow. Still, life went on. Weeks passed, work continued. I focused on raising Maya and doing my job, which brings me back to the day my boss closed the office door and said, "I'm pregnant." The moment those words left her mouth, I felt the air disappear from the room. My brain instantly went back to that rainy retreat night. But we hadn't done anything, not even close. I stared at her, completely confused. She noticed my expression and quickly shook her head. "No, Marcus," she said softly. "It's not what you think." Then she took a deep breath and told me the real reason she had called me into her office. She explained that the pregnancy had come as a shock to her too. The father wasn't someone she trusted or even wanted in her life anymore. The situation had become messy and public, and the company board was already questioning whether she could continue leading while dealing with a personal scandal. She said she needed someone she could trust completely to help manage the company during the chaos that was about to explode, and for reasons she couldn't fully explain, she believed that person was me. Now let me pause here for a moment and ask you something, because this was the point where my life reached a crossroads. Imagine you're a single father, already juggling work and parenting responsibilities. Your powerful CEO boss suddenly asks you to become her closest professional ally during the most vulnerable moment of her life. Accepting could change your career forever, but it could also drag you into a storm of rumors and office politics. So tell me honestly, what would you have done in my position? Would you step forward and help, or step back to protect the quiet life you built for your child? Go ahead and think about that, because the choice I made changed everything that followed. I agreed to help her. The months that followed were some of the most intense of my life. The board tried to pressure Claire into stepping down temporarily. Investors questioned her leadership. Rumors spread through the office faster than wildfire. Through it all, I stayed by her side professionally, managing operations, calming nervous employees, and making sure the company kept moving forward. What started as a professional alliance slowly grew into something deeper. I saw how strong she was despite everything thrown at her. She saw how fiercely I protected the people who depended on me. And somewhere along the way, the walls we had built around ourselves began to crack. The climax came the night the board attempted to vote her out as CEO. The meeting lasted hours. Accusations, arguments, threats. Finally, Claire stood up and gave the most powerful speech I have ever heard. She told them leadership wasn't about perfection. It was about resilience. She admitted she was pregnant, admitted her life was complicated, but reminded them she had doubled the company's revenue in 3 years. When she finished speaking, the room was silent. The vote was taken. She stayed. The aftermath changed both our lives. The company stabilized, the rumors faded, and a few weeks later, Claire came to my house for dinner to thank me for standing by her when everyone else doubted her. Maya instantly adored her. Watching the two of them laugh together in my living room made something inside my chest feel warmer than it had in years. That night, Claire admitted something surprising. She said the twist she never saw coming wasn't the pregnancy, it was realizing that the person who understood her best wasn't an executive or investor. It was a single dad who just wanted to do the right thing. Life has a strange way of bringing people together when they least expect it. What started as a shocking confession in an office eventually turned into the beginning of something neither of us planned. Not a scandal, not a disaster, but a partnership built on trust, respect, and maybe something more. If you think standing by someone during their hardest moment was the right thing to do, go ahead and like this video. And if you want to hear more powerful stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. If you were in my position, would you have helped your boss when she revealed her secret, or walked away to protect your own life? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you all in the next one.